Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another random spicy romance recommendation. So I have some smutty delights to share. Some of them, they're varying degrees. They're not all necessarily a super high heat level. We'll discuss it with each one as we go. But I like to do these videos once or twice a month to just be able to talk about some random books that maybe I've talked a lot about, maybe I've hardly mentioned, maybe I've never mentioned before on my channel. But I like to just snag a few that I've read recently or sometimes a long time ago. Like I said, there's no real rules for these, so these random spicy romance recs are just to not have to have any theme particular, although I do have an entire playlist of all the different tropes that I have made videos about in the past, so you can check that out. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first one I'd like to recommend is Surrendering to the Duke by Stevie Sparks. This was a recent release by this author and was also a debut historical romance. Now, this one is very unique because even though this cover doesn't perfectly represent this romance actually takes place in 1921. So this is a between the war romance is how I've heard people refer to it. And we have Michael, who is now the Duke due to the loss of his brother. And we have his brother's widow, Emmeline, who has a young child, and she had been in kind of a marriage of convenience with his brother, and now, after his brother has died in the war, she has still been living with the family. She's very loved by this family, so much so that her mother-in-law, and aka Michael's mother, wants her to be around forever. Wants her to stick around, doesn't want to lose her. And so she is encouraging Michael to propose to Emmeline and, just do another marriage of convenience to keep her around because she wants to make sure that her granddaughter is always with her, and she also wants to make sure that Emmeline is taking care of her always. The only thing is, there's two things. One, Michael has actually secretly had feelings for Emmeline since he very first met her all those years ago when she was getting married to his brother. And number two, though Emmeline really likes Michael and loves him as a, brother currently, she is very wary of getting married again. And not because her first husband was cruel to her. Actually, she sees him as very much a savior in her life. More so, she doesn't want to be controlled by a man again. And that didn't have to do with her first husband, who for the most part was actually in the war for a good portion of their marriage. But yeah, so she's very nervous. And Michael comes up with a solution to this. He's like, hey, no one is saying that I have to do this right now. I will need to get married. I will need to have an heir. But we don't have to be married tomorrow. So how about I court you first? Because you never really got to have that with my brother. It happened very quickly. And so that's what happens. He courts her. And there's also a lot of trauma that needs to be unpacked. Again, not from the brother. I know I have to keep saying that, but it's like she has trauma in her past related to family members and related to abuse, some of it of the essay variety. And so there's just a lot that her and Michael need to unpack together. And I thought this was very beautiful. It does become very steamy, but it's a slow burn between these two. And it did have some darker themes that we took on, you could tell based on what I had shared about it. And I just thought this was so beautiful. And I thought this author did a great job starting off this series. And I really look forward to more from Stevie Sparks. Then I want to recommend Stray by Daisy Jane. Now, this one, I have talked about Daisy Jane a few times on this channel. She comes up when I do a lot of my spicy trope videos or my, very oddly specific recommendations, because her videos have some kinks and some scenarios that are oddly specific. And this one has that as well. This has a female dom, and I really love that it also has pegging in it at one point. So two things that I just adore in books. But I feel like with Force and also the first one in the series get talked about more than this middle one does. Because let's be honest, not everyone loves reading the dominant woman, and I totally get that. I don't always enjoy reading it either. It takes a special touch for me to like a dominant woman. And also Daisy Jane does drag on her stories just a little bit. I just want to warn you, I felt that pretty much everyone in this series has been about 50 pages too long, but because of their unique nature and what they bring, like, I also still enjoy continuing to recommend them because of that. So what are you gonna do? You know, I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater in this case. And so this one involves a scenario where our heroine is looking for a job, and she needs to make some money. She is a single mom, and she gets connected with this woman who suggests that she be a female dom. And she's like, this is how you find potential men who could be clients of yours, and you can look for these ads that are put out. Well, it turns out that our hero is looking for someone to manage his gym, to be like a gym manager. But apparently this is also a code word for like a dominatrix. And so our heroine shows up to be a dominatrix, and he's actually looking to hire someone to work at his gym, but he's so turned on by her bossing him around that he even pays her for her visit, even though he's like, what is going on? This isn't what I thought of. And we enter into this scenario where he is now paying a dominatrix to boss him around every week, and it's glorious. Like, I really loved it. It has just the right amount of humor that you think would be there for a scenario like this. And there are some slight dark aspects, but all in all, even the one in this series that involves like stalking, which is like, these are like light dark romance. I don't know another way to say it. Like, they have some dark themes, but they're kind of handled with a little bit more lightness and not as much dread as you'd find in a dark romance. So yeah, I recommend Stray. Then I would like to recommend for your hockey-loving heart, Consider Me by Becca Mack. I know that I'm maybe one of the last people recommending this one, but I read this because my friend Joe recommended it to me. I'd also seen many other people reading it, so it isn't just Joe who'd recommended it, but she just completely convinced me with how much she loved this hero and how lovable he was and what a golden retriever he was. And this has a scenario that reminds me a little bit of like Mile High, where the hero is a complete playboy and then he meets a heroine who doesn't want to give him the time of day, and he goes about proving that he should be given the time of day. And you know, there's just something extra special about that, right? Like, we love to see it. And so he goes about cleaning up his act and trying to win over this woman. And this is another one that, like, I think it goes on a tiny bit too long, but I actually listened to the audiobook for this one, which I really liked, and while I was working on some cross-stitching projects, and so it made the time go by fast, and I really enjoyed myself. So, highly recommend. Definitely some good smutty time in this one. This man is a dirty talker, and we have some hot and spicy times in this book, for sure. We also have one that I have mentioned in quite a few videos, and I probably will again because I enjoyed it so much, and that is One Look by Lena Hendricks. This is the first book in the Sullivan family, and she actually has One Touch coming out either like the end of June or beginning of July. I can't remember, but it's coming soon, and I love this one. This was a single dad. He is a football coach. Our heroine is an out-of-work actress who at the beginning of this book is actually hired to be a mourner at a funeral. So this town actually has a feud that's going on in it, and when one like older gentleman dies who is, you know, from one of the families of this feud, some of the older concerned ladies in the town are afraid there won't be enough, you know, mourners at this funeral. So they hire this actress to play a mourner. And it actually stirs up a little bit of trouble because they're like, who is this? Was this a secret mistress of this man? Like, who is this? Because she's there crying. And it actually sets Wyatt is this hero. I believe this hero's name is Wyatt. Lark and Wyatt, yeah. It sets him up to like be questioning this woman, but she ends up being stuck in town for a while and then ends up getting a job, eventually being his assistant slash nanny. Ends up happening because he's a single dad. And there are also some football players who are staying with him during the off season because they need to keep their noses clean. One of them needs to heal from an injury, and so she ends up being a nanny to his child, but also kind of being like a nanny to these college football players as well. So really, really enjoyed this one. This one was a 5-star read, and I love this one too because this series is kind of gonna have like a love language vibe to it. Like, this one's One Look, the next one is One Touch. And I'm really excited to see where we go with that. Love language gets brought up in this book quite a bit, and I just love that so much. Lena herself brings up love language a lot in her like author's notes and things like that, so I really enjoy that. Then I'm so happy to show this off. When I first received this for my birthday, I couldn't show the cover of it because I needed to wait for the original, what's it called? The original typeset creator to share it. But for my birthday, Mel from Mel Binds Fix sent me the Heartbreak Prince by Diasterisms, and I actually read this, I think, I can't remember if I read it in, I think I read it in April. It was either March or April that I read this. But this is a Raylo fanfic, but it's set at Hogwarts. So it's set at a Hogwarts that's called Hogwarts and has the magic and it has the same houses, but it's basically filled with Star Wars characters. That's kind of the best way to say it. And so at this one, Ben Solo gets hired to be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And Rey is a 7th year Gryffindor, and so are all, like, she has all of her other Star Wars characters there with her as well. And this is a forbidden romance between these two, and a forbidden romance that gets very, very spicy. Here's the beautiful back of this. But yeah, you can find this on AO3. I'll have a link to it down below, but I wanted to share it because I love sharing fanfics when I do spicy romance recs because they are free. Anyone can access them. Anyone can read them. And yeah, I just love being able to share that as well as with the other books that I read because I absolutely love fanfics. I count them in my reading. You guys should know this. I have 3 or 4 different videos recommending fanfics. And this was one of the few that is outside of like Harry Potter that I read, even though it's taking place at Hogwarts, it very much is more like Star Wars fanfic where they're like wizards. So yeah, highly recommend. I love this one. And this one is like a 4 on the spice scale, 4.5. It's very, very spicy chili peppers. Then I want to share a book that I recently reread because one of my patrons wanted it annotated. And I mean, I was only too happy to reread this author because I adore her. So this is Escorted by Claire Kent. And this is actually an escort romance with a male escort. And our heroine is a writer who I think she's in her late 20s and she's a virgin. And so she gets referred to this escort whose name is, dude, I just forgot his name. That's not Ander, whose name is Ander. He is a very like well-liked escort, and so she gets a referral to him and she hires him to take her virginity, and she ends up loving what he does so much that she sees him weekly, and the lines become blurred between client and escort in here, and I love it. Claire Kent writes such gut-wrenching and real stories. It's amazing. And this book will make you uncomfortable at different places. It absolutely will. But again, she tells such a powerful story that makes you feel like these characters are so real. Like they just feel so achingly real. And it's what always brings me back to her stories. I love her stories so much. So highly recommend this one. And then the last one is a recent release, and I really recommend this whole series, but I wanted to give this one some love, and that is The Duchess Takes a Husband by Harper St. George. This one was book 4 and the last book in the Gilded Age Heiresses, and this one is about our heroine named Camille, who is the Duchess of Hereford, and her husband has recently died, and it was a pretty emotionally abusive relationship, and she has never really been able to feel pleasure or enjoy sex just because her partner sucked and didn't care about her. And so now that she's a widow and she has a bit more freedom in society and isn't being controlled by her abusive husband, she has a chance to explore and see, you know, what kind of woman she's going to be. And so she actually asked Jacob, who is the illegitimate brother of one of her friend's husbands, if he would be the one to teach her pleasure. And he's very hesitant at first because he in his gut is like, I could really like Camille. Like, I do like Camille, and I don't want to be sexually involved with someone where it's going to be awkward for us and our friends. And just, he sees the signs of this being not a great deal, like, to get involved. But when he sees how determined she is and sees that she would be with someone anyway, he decides that who better to do it than him. And so this book does involve sex lessons in it, but I really enjoyed how Jacob went about them. I mean, obviously she does have some scars. She was married to an abusive man who, again, was more emotionally than physically, but I mean, she was still having to have sex with this man who didn't care about her feelings or her pleasure. But he also was much more like emotionally abusive than he was in other ways. And, you know, that is still very painful too, you know? So anyway, I really love Harper St. George's writing, and I'm very excited for the new series that she is going to be doing soon as well. So there you go. Those are some of my spicy romance recs that I have for you. I like to keep these videos short and sweet if I can. So if you want to read any of these books, make sure you check out the description down below. I have links for affiliate links, as well as I will have the link to the Heartbreak Prince, so you can read that for free if you want. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe for more. I put up 4 videos a week. I also have a Patreon, channel memberships, and other ways you can support me, because I do this full time if you're interested. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.